As before, I don't know whether any of you were in the first session, but you can ask the panel questions and we'll address the questions at the end of the presentations. So on the panel today, we have got Steve Marshall from LED UK. Steve has prepared, he's an expert on LED lighting. He took part in an interview earlier, which is available. I think if someone could pop a link in the chat to Steve's video, if people want to watch that afterwards, if they haven't already seen it. But Steve's here to answer any questions you have on LED lighting. And use the Q&A feature, though, if you want to ask questions. As before, the chat is for general discussion amongst participants. Okay, so what are we looking at today? Well, firstly, I'm going to hand over to Andy Derling just to tell us about Eco Action Network, one of the groups behind today.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm one of the people responsible for helping to support the Eastbourne Eco Action Network, which was set up in 2019 as a direct result of the decision by Eastbourne Borough Council to commit to delivering a carbon neutral town by 2030. Obviously, the target was not just to commit the council to reduce its own emission, but also to help the town become carbon neutral by 2030. But to do that, the council needed a community partner. And the Eastbourne Eco Action Network is basically a network of volunteers who are all agreed to work together in a variety of working groups to help partner with the council to try and bring everybody on board in the town to deliver a carbon neutral town by 2030. There's a huge range of expertise and backgrounds in the network, and basically that's what it does, really. It's and anybody can get involved. It really is a question of people just joining in whichever working group they want to, and bringing their own skills and expertise and interest to the collective job of working together to reduce the carbon emissions locally. And in fact, some of the working groups have now spun off to become independent entities in their own right. Our carbon capture group spun off to become Treeborn. Our education group spun off to become the Eco Education Network. And our food group is now in the process of spinning off to become the Eastbourne Food Partnership. So all sorts of so what we do in the network is really just to facilitate support and encourage collaboration across all sectors of the community in order to deliver a carbon neutral town.
Thank you. And Gemma's just going to
we have
Seaford Environmental Alliance.
Hello, yeah, I'm Gemma. We set up Seaford Environmental Alliance just over a year ago now within the lockdown, so it's been an interesting time, but we managed to get quite a lot done through Zoom, which was amazing. But we set up really to support community-led climate action through events and projects. And we've just acquired a building which we're going to use as a climate hub. We've got it for at least the next year, where we can run projects such as a repair cafe, community fridge. Will hold talks, workshops, and also just gives us the flexibility to run other environmental projects, whatever comes along really, and support other projects that are in the town. Our aim is to raise awareness of environmental issues and to help people share skills to become more resilient to the impacts of climate change and to live in a better environment. People can find out what's happening through our website, visiting the hub. We hold monthly meetings where people can share ideas, gain support for projects, and we also send out a monthly newsletter. So yeah, anyone can get involved. So thanks.
Thank you. So in the session today, we're going to look at things that we can all do and some of the things that have been set up locally. We're focusing on how we can reduce, so reducing the amount of fossil fuel energy we use in our homes. And to this first, we're going to feature how we can conserve energy, because in the third session at 12:15 we're going to be looking at renewable energy. We want to look at how we can reduce the amount that we use and we waste. We want to buy less, but we also want to take advantage of ways we can reuse our resources with repair and share schemes locally. And we want to think about how we can recycle and compost, because all of these things are going to help us not just to save energy, but they're also going to help us to save money. So conserving energy, the really big one in here for making a difference in domestic homes is insulation. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll have a quick skirt around grants for insulation, which are pretty thin on the ground at the moment. And a good way of reducing energy in your home is to use LED lighting wherever possible, which in fact it's anywhere is possible with LED lighting. And monitoring your energy use is also useful, so we'll talk about that. And when you monitor your energy, it can help you to adapt and change behaviours. And we're looking really as well, not just at big changes, but at low cost changes that we can all make. So I'm going to hand back over to Gemma, and we're going to talk about insulation.
So why should we insulate our homes? So it keeps our homes warmer and more comfortable in the winter and cooler in the summer, maintains a more stable temperature throughout the year. Makes the home more energy efficient, which reduces your carbon footprint, as heating will be needed less, and you may find it being kept at a lower temperature, which also saves you money. Improves soundproofing, which is a bonus. And in an uninsulated home, 33% of the heat is lost through the walls, the windows and doors, 25% through the roof, and 10% through the floor. So.
Thank you. We just have a set of resources here that we'll just let you see where they are. So I'm just going to pop to those on insulation, because we won't have time to talk through all of these, but to let you know that you can go back and have a look at what's there. So on our website, we have a page with bringing together insulation information, and it's anything from big tips to big projects. So we have on there some information on grants and funding. I'll talk about that in a second, and lots of tips on cost-effective ways to save heat and energy. Things like an interesting thing that I've not tried yet, but I am going to try, is you can put a bit of tin foil behind your radiator, and that will reflect heat back into the room and save it being lost out through walls, which is a big loss of heat. Retrofit Solutions says tips on anything from draft proofing your home and double glazing, and a very helpful information from Lewes on how to install your own secondary glazing at a very, very low cost. We have a case study from Rachel and Adam Fry in Newhaven, who went through, so you're looking at the bigger stories, a whole house insulation. So they've got lots of tips and lessons learned, and fab videos that were produced by Steph and Ray, who are on the call. So do take a look at that. And as I mentioned in the first session, there's also a free course, a free retrofit course on understanding insulation and understanding retrofit. So if you are thinking about doing some insulation, it's a really good idea to understand how it all works, because that will guide you to doing the things that are going to make the most difference. So those are our resources. I'm just going to move that web page out of your way. Bear with me, just got to juggle some things around. Okay, so funding. There is funding. It comes and goes, unfortunately, for all sorts of things. The government will put something up that most people spend a long time trying to work out how they can use it, what it all means, and then it's pulled away again very quickly. So people are missing out in that way. So what we're endeavouring to do going forward now with the Energy and Housing Group is to keep a really watchful eye on funding as it comes along, and then make sure that we try and interpret it and share that information around locally so that we can take advantage. So our advice is do your research now. Start looking at what you want to do in the way of insulating or retrofitting your home, and so that when funding opportunities do come around, you're ready to pounce on them. One source of funding that is still available now is the energy company obligation. So for anybody that is in receipt of benefits, there are all sorts of criteria you might fit into, and there's a way of finding out. So look on our website and tell you how to find out whether you're eligible. But with the energy company obligations, it's what it says. So your energy company is obliged to help you reduce the amount of heat you use. And that can be anything from them helping to pay for retrofitting new insulation in lofts, etc., to replacing your boiler with a more efficient boiler. So that that energy company obligation funding is in place until March 2022. But the good news is that, well, rumour has it, nothing is there until we actually see it, but I've heard that the government are planning to extend the energy company obligation scheme for another 4 years. You know, if you can, then leap ahead. The thing with it is that each energy company is expected to send a certain percentage on funding this scheme, and when they've used up that, when they've spent all that money, they then close for application. So if your energy company is closed now, you might have another opportunity in March 2022. Duncan earlier mentioned the campaign to improve insulation. It is really a key thing that is going to make so much difference to our housing stock is very, very behind the UK housing stock. Older houses have little or no insulation, and that applies to lots of properties, certainly in Eastbourne and probably in Seaford as well. But we lose so much. Much of our carbon emissions are from heat losses. And 80% of UK homes rely on gas for heating. And if we watch what's happening to gas prices now, the tips we've got on our website, we hope will help you. And there isn't a time when it's been needed more than I think it is now. Okay, so I'm handing back to Gemma now with knowing where your energy goes.
I think it's Andrew for this one.
Sorry, is it Andy or is it me? I think it might be me again, sorry. This is really just talking about energy monitors. So some of you may already have them. If you've had a smart meter installed, your energy company will give you one of these for free, I believe, but you can also buy them for around £30 standalone if you don't have an energy monitor, or you can buy devices that plug that you can use on individual devices. And these have been really, really helpful. We were speaking to Boutique Modern, who have worked with residents that have moved on to electric only heating. And what they have found that by using these monitors, they can see exactly where their energy is being used, and they can then change their behaviour. So small steps or big steps, I don't know. People don't always realise how much energy is used when you take a shower. So if you're taking a 20-minute shower, cutting down to 10 minutes or even 5 minutes will save a really huge sum of money. And moving to LED lighting, as I say, Steve is going to talk, answer questions later. But even replacing one light bulb can save you £5 a year. But we've got a game at the end of the session if anyone wants to join, if we've got any families or households that want to play, where we can look at some of the different costs of energy. LED resources, that's really a link to a web page which we could pop into the chat perhaps, with information on LED lighting. This was Andy.
No, this is me.
Gemma, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so talk about a little bit about repair cafes. So yeah, they're popping up all over the country and they're proving really successful. Locally, we have them in Lewes, Chailey, Forest Row, Heathfield, Brighton, and we'll be starting ours in Seaford at the end of this month. So it works by volunteers donating their skills and time to show people how to fix items that would otherwise be thrown away. If anyone's interested in starting their own repair cafe, there's a strong local network which meets regularly. We have been meeting on Zoom, just to share advice. And they also have a email group that you can just ask questions. And also, if you on the website, you can watch the video with Tony Rowell from the Lewes Repair Cafe, who also set up the Library of Things. It was a really useful video to find out more. And also the sheds, right? There are sheds in Langley, Hampden Park, Seaside, Lewes. And the sheds are for over 50s. They provide a place to meet and practice woodwork, other skills with like-minded shed lovers. And there's also a video about that on the website. And Library of Things. So one set up in Lewes a couple of months ago, it's going really well. So this is great for things perhaps if you don't need very often, or you don't have room to store, such as electric tools, camping equipment, or children's toys. Again, find out more on the website. And if you're interested in any of these for your community, visit the Eco Homes website to hear from the organisers who've set up all these projects locally.
Thank you, Gemma. And Andy.
Right. Well, we already heard a lot from Duncan Baker Brown earlier about reduce and recycle, but I think it pretty much says everything really. I should point out that we do have in Eastbourne the plastic-free Eastbourne, which is a movement that's been growing really rapidly to deal with plastic, and Oliver Sterno is the guy who founded Plastic Free Eastbourne, and Eastbourne does have been recognised as a plastic as part of the plastic free town network. So it's there's lots of businesses and people in Eastbourne doing their best to try to avoid throwing away plastic and recycling it as much as possible. And I think actually Jim here might be able to say, Councillor James Murray might be able to talk about how Eastbourne Borough Council is dealing with reducing and recycling as well.
Is that a prompt? Well, yes, Eastbourne is very keen on sort of reducing the amount of waste that we're putting into landfill. We've appointed Neil Peters as our sort of waste champion. So his job now is sort of being reduced from being a neighbourhood advisor to just working with the recycling of waste within the town and how we can promote that and sort of get the information out to as many people as possible. Jill was talking about sort of small steps earlier on, and it really is just the individual person just making the difference and trying to do what they can within their own household. One of the big problems that we've got with waste in Eastbourne at the moment is that people aren't washing their bottles and cans and things before they go into the tins, into the green bins, and this sort of then corrupts the whole bin. So that particular bin then can't actually go into recycling and ends up going back into landfill again. So it's really important that people sort of just get the message and understand that just by cleaning your rubbish before it goes into the recycling makes a big difference to what we can do within the town. Food waste is something which we're also looking at as well. At the moment, we don't recycle our food, but we will hopefully have that in place within the next 2 years. And yes, Oliver Sterno is doing an amazing job at sort of promoting not only plastic free Eastbourne but sort of recycling water, the Spring Water Festival, which will be coming up in 2022. This is promoting sort of people reusing bottles and sort of taking advantage of the resources that we have around the town.
Yeah, I should also add, if I may, that food waste, as Councillor Murray mentioned, food waste is a big issue, and this is something that we can do as individuals immediately to tackle if we wish. Because instead of just putting food waste in the bin, in the dustbin, there are alternatives. For example, we can have wormeries in our kitchen. It's possible to buy a wormery that you can put in your own kitchen and put food scraps in the wormery, and it turned the food scrap very quickly into a very useful fertilizer, which you can put in your garden to grow your veg or your flowers. So and hopefully in the future there will be food waste composting schemes across the community, so you don't have to do it in your own kitchen, but you can just take your food scrap to a local community wormery and have it dealt with that way. The Eastbourne Food Partnership, which has just been set up, is going to be looking in great detail at how we can deal with our food waste locally and avoid having it just dumped in the dustbin and then dumped in landfill, which just leads to methane off-gassing. Because if you don't compost food waste properly, you just get methane off-gassing, which does nobody any good and certainly doesn't do the climate any good.
Thank you, Andy. Gemma, is there a food partnership in the Seaford area? Actually,
yeah, the Lewes District Food Partnership is been going for a few months now. Yeah, but just getting the steering group together, and yeah, lots of projects happening.
I'm just going to share the resources from our website on food waste so that you can have a look at those. Sorry, I'm on the wrong one there now. Bear with me. So on how to save energy and resources, we have, this is the session we're in now, we have a number of resources: the LED lighting, the insulating, repair cafes, plastic-free Eastbourne, and Neil Peters has produced a video which is very helpful on exactly what happens to waste and recycling in Eastbourne and how we can do more to prevent contamination, as Jim already referred to. So it's just the things not to put in, and all sorts of strange things do get put in the recycling, which does, as Jim said, mean the whole load gets tipped. But local schemes for tackling food waste, we've put information on here that we know about, but you may know of some more. So if you do, please add a comment. The site takes comments, and so just put a note in the comments and then we'll add more information here. So community fridges and supermarkets, we've got a list of community fridges, and if you don't know what a community fridge is, it's not the same as a food bank. It's run by volunteers. It takes contributions from local supermarkets and food suppliers, so anything that's surplus, and then it's actually sold on at low cost, or maybe that it isn't even priced, but just for voluntary contributions. So those are really there to help people in the community. And there's one at Langley, there's details on the website. There's one in Old Town, they're all open at different times, at Seaside, in Newhaven and Peacehaven, and in Seaford. So be aware that those are there. And food partnerships, Andy has mentioned, there's a Lewes and District, there's an Eastbourne one, and Gemma said a Seaford one on the way. If you have an allotment, you may have some surplus. In Eastbourne, there is a Gorringe Road allotment site office that you can take surplus to, and then that will be picked up by the local food bank. In Willingdon, where I live, and many other areas, residents are finding ways to share their surplus. And we have a group called the Willing in Willingdon, and we put little wood signs up outside our homes inviting people to take produce or anything else that we don't actually need. And those things disappear very, very quickly. So it's a useful way of sharing. And we've got information on compost. So Brighton and Hove help people set up community compost. So there's a useful resource if you're thinking about community compost where you live. There's tips on how community composting works, as well as information on how to do your own home composting. Andy mentioned wormeries as a good way of getting rid of kitchen waste. I was a little bit worried that I might not be able to keep my worms alive and they'd go the way of my houseplant. So I didn't go for wormeries, but I went for bokashi bins, which I think are a really great way of dealing with kitchen waste, because you can put anything in, as with the wormery. You can put cooked food, dairy, fish, meat, gravy, fat. You can throw all of that stuff in, and you just add some bran, and that and seal the lid, and then that's airtight. So that ferments rather than a rotting, which means it doesn't smell. I don't think it smells. I think it smells beautiful. It smells of honey and yeast to me. That might be just me, but that's a really cheap and effective way of getting rid of composting your food waste. Then when it's finished, when it's composted, you can either dig it in, put it into your garden, dig it straight into the soil, or add it to your green compost in the garden. So there's more information on all of those, as well as information, some really helpful tips on how to reduce wasting your food. There's all sorts of things that you can reuse that you might not have thought of. So some tips from Brighton and Hove Food Partnership, who are doing really well in that. So let me just come back to here. We really hoped that this session we can spend more time discussing your ideas and taking questions. So I don't know, Jim, you've been looking at the chat. Have we got any questions on any of the local schemes we're talking about, as well as have you got any questions on LED lighting? If you haven't, by the way, if you haven't watched the video, do watch it, because one of the things that I thought I had successfully replaced my LED light bulbs everywhere, but in fact, I didn't really, it's not always enough just to take a light bulb out, especially if it's got a transformer, so like those ceiling lights. And Steve Marshall put me straight on that. So if you are replacing your lighting, do have a look at Steve's video, or also add some questions to the Q&A panel, and then we will try and address them. Jim, are you ready to take on the questions in the Q&A?
Okay, there's just one question in at the moment about the waste and washing the waste. That does happen at the waste site as well. So everything comes off the back of the lorry, goes through the various channels. The glass gets broken up, the metal gets taken out by magnets, and some of the glass and things do get washed and things at that point as well. But that doesn't cover a huge amount of what we do actually within what we could do locally. That would just make their life so much easier, and we could recycle more and more waste. At the moment in Eastbourne, we cycle about 35%, I think, of what we throw away. Our target for that would be about 70% at this present time. You know, so we really want to sort of up our game on that. Okay, so we're getting some more questions coming through now. So Jules Woodward, how do we know if we have an LED light or not?
Should we hand over to
Steve?
Yeah, I'm just going through. There's a couple in there actually that just popped up for me. LED light or not? That's a dip there. Really, you need to take it out, the bulb out from where it's actually installed, and it should say on the side. And have a look at the wattages that's actually written on the glass. If it's a standard B22 bulb or a spotlight, if it's below 10 watts, then in theory it should be an LED, unless it's an old style CF, a compact fluorescent tube, but they normally take so long to start up, where LED lights are instant. So that's the first thing. I'll check your wattage. On an old bulb, it's going to be 25 watts, 50 watts, something like that. On a later LED, it will be 10 watts and below. In theory, it'll be about 5 watts round about there. And then the other person, TT, my LED ceiling light spots buzz, and a number of the bulbs only work intermittently. Okay, first thing you need to discuss is find out what actual bulbs you've got in there. And this is the issue that I think Jill had as well. If you've got the old style MR16 bulbs, which have like 2 prongs on the back, they are running through a transformer and they're reduced down to 12 volts. If you're still utilizing those transformers, you're best actually get an electrician in, taking away the drivers that are behind them, and actually putting in GU10 bulbs with a new bulb holder. And yes, if they are on a dimmer, you will need to upgrade your dimmer switch as well. But that's if you've got GU10s, which have got like the 2 nail heads on the back of the bulbs, then you can just look at getting electronic dimmer switch, which will run from 0 to say 50 watts, where if you had 50 watt GU10s before, and you've just put a load of LEDs in there, when you turn the dimmer down, it won't read any current reading, so they will buzz and flash and just go out. So hopefully that answers both their questions there.
There's quite a bit of technical information there. When I think of the LED bulbs, there's two types which I know. One which has just got literally two wires that stick into the hole, and you just literally push it up and it pops into place. And there's also the other one which you were talking about. Was it like the nail head, which is one which you have to push in and then spin? Is that the two different types?
That's exactly it, Jim. Yeah, the first one you mentioned, which has got like the two prongs, is the older style 12 volt reduced bulbs. They're MR16s. So if you're running those inside there, you've got a driver, there's like a ballast and a driver behind that, which reduces down the mains voltage to 12 volt to run the lamp. So I actually recommend taking that completely away and just putting in a new lamp holder and using the GU10, which has got like the flat nail heads, which you push and twist.
Lovely. And what's the sort of cost and then payback on that?
Well, if you've got the old style MR16s in there, they're running 25 to 50 watts plus the actual driver itself, and you can reduce that down to 5 watts.
So much cheaper to run.
Very much, a lot cheaper to run, and in theory, by getting rid of the old drivers and running you should, and if you buy a good quality LED bulb, this is the other thing you do get into. If you go into, unfortunately, certain places, like anything else, it's you get what you pay for, and LED bulbs are no different. So if you can look for the LEDs work on working life, so you want to look for the longest working life, which is done in thousands of hours. Cheap ones will only run at 15,000 hours, but you can get good ones that run to 25 to 30,000 hours. And then they will last so much longer for you.
Okay, thank you.
And increase your payback that way, because you just don't have to change them.
Yeah.
Regularly.
I've got Stephanie Granger. Can we do a tour around the Recycling Waste Centre if we are interested? They do tours down there. The waste centre that we use in Eastbourne is down at Arundel. So if we've been down there as councillors, it's very, very interesting. Councillor Swansborough drove all the way down there to go down there, and then because of the magnets that they use within the waste area there, he's got a pacemaker fitted, so he wasn't allowed. So just just a heads up there, if you've got a pacemaker you can't get in. But yes, I do believe that they do a show and tell at various times down there. Ray Birdsong, my new linear LEDs suddenly flash very brightly. Is this because of the old dimmer switch?
I presume so. It's very different. Linear. Is it just a tube that you've had fitted in the light, or is it a completely new LED fitting? Again, if it's, you need to make sure, is that LED light able to dim? Because on an LED you need a dimmable driver to make it work. So that's or again, it could be the dimmer switch itself. Okay, new linear LED says it's dimmable. Then I would personally check out your dimmer switch there, Ray. Hopefully that answers that one. Great.
Okay, I can't see any other questions coming through at the moment. Right. So has anybody else got any other questions about what we've been talking about?
I'd like to know if there are people on the call that are interested in setting up repair cafes or libraries of things locally. It'd just be interesting to know how much interest there is, because it's one of those things that if you get together, you can make it happen.
I've got to say that the sheds that we have in Eastbourne are amazing resources. We've got one at Langley, which is lots of carpentry, and they've got wood turning and metal turning lathes and things up there, and they're doing a lot of work for the local community as well. So if you've got sort of small projects that you want to recycle or repair rather than throw away, then people are taking their items up to them. And then the one in Hampden Park is a smaller shop, but it's right in the middle of Brassey Parade, and they get a lot of drop-in people there, and they're doing lots of artwork and tapestries and recycling of plastics to sort of make different pieces of artwork. So a really good resource is the sheds, and if you've got any of your skills that you could pass on to other people, then they're always very much valued at these particular places. I did some workshops at the Priory where we were recycling pallets and things, turning them into mud kitchens and various other bits of furniture and things. Great way to spend a Saturday afternoon, and sort of passing on your skills to other people.
Jules has a question in the chat, Jim.
Yeah. Why do we not have a food waste council collection? We don't have one at the moment because we haven't got anywhere to take it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to work out what we can do with the waste once we've got hold of it. And then once that's sorted out, then we will start doing food waste ourselves. But it is high on our agenda for recycling, to have it in place within at least the next 24 months. And Jules has also asked where the wood lathe is. That's up at Langley in Etchingham Road, at the old Priory there. So next to the church in Etchingham Road. That runs on I think it's a Monday, Tuesday and a Wednesday mornings. Any other questions?
I've got one actually, James.
Yeah.
Are we looking at anaerobic digestion or waste to energy locally?
I personally can't answer that question. I don't know what we're going to do with the waste once we get a hold of it. I think, Andrew, you might know something to do with some of the projects that you're working with.
I don't know of any project locally that myself that deal with that kind of waste to energy project, anaerobic waste to energy. Sorry, I simply have no knowledge of what's going on locally with that. It's not within my field of expertise, that one.
We did have access to a rocket composter up in Hailsham at one point, but unfortunately that project folded. But that was really good because they had a load of greenhouses up there as well. So the rocket composter sort of turns the food waste into compost very much quicker, and then it was used on the masses of beds and things that they've got up there. But so that would be something which we've been sort of trying to introduce later on. Stephanie is asking, why are the bins plastic? There's reusable plastic, and then there's the single-use plastic. Single-use plastic is the stuff that you use when you're buying a bottle of water. The reusable plastic, which is the stuff that we use for the bins, is potentially a good way of using those particular materials. You know, your bin will stay with you for a good 10, 15, 20 years, you know, so although eventually it's going to go into some sort of waste, that type of hard plastic can be sort of reground down and then reused again in the future. But at the moment, it's not classed as a single-use plastic, which is the stuff that we're really focusing on trying to get rid of.
If I could butt in here, the Eastbourne Borough Council were thinking, weren't they, Councillor Murray, at one point, or they were investigating a plastic waste, dirty plastic waste to energy project that's going on in Newhaven. I think Newhaven, it's not anaerobic digestion, but the dirty plastic that can't be recycled, instead of that going to landfill, there is a firm in Newhaven that is pioneering taking that dirty plastic and burning it in such a way that it generates heat that can be distributed locally to businesses and homes, and you're left with virtually no residue, just a fine ash, a small amount of fine ash at the end. It's designed to be a unit which could be put into anywhere. So, for example, the local hospital could have it on site, so they could burn all their dirty plastic on site and use that energy from that to heat the hospital. And there'd be virtually no waste products at the end of it, because obviously clinical waste is too dirty to recycle. So I forget the name of the firm, but I think some of the Eastbourne Borough councillors have visited that site in Newhaven and had a look at the technology involved in that.
Yeah, some of these councillors have. I wasn't one of them. Councillor Dow is the lead on the waste in Eastbourne, and I know that was something that they were interested in looking at, because as well as burning the plastic and ending up with just a very small pile of ash, it also doesn't put any waste into the air as well. The fumes are actually recycled, and I think you end up with water vapor rather than anything else as well, because it's sort of recycled. The energy is recycled within itself.
Yeah, that's a very important point. It's separate to the incinerator. It's separate from the Newhaven incinerator that gets such a bad press. The fume, as you say, the fumes are kept within the system and don't escape. So.
Sally Boys is asking how much plastic is sent to the incinerator at Newhaven. We don't send anything to Newhaven, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, we send it all to Arundel. So all of our waste goes down there, apart from our landfill. Again, it's not my area of expertise, this one. It's just Councillor Dow would be able to answer questions directly if you wanted to email him.
There is also some more information in the video that Neil Peters prepared about how plastic is sorted at the recycling centre. I can't pronounce it, Veolia or whatever. His video explains exactly how they do sort things out. And one of the things he's mentioned in contamination is because they have, I think it's done by sort of computers and laser beams and things, how they sort the plastic out. But black plastic bin liners, don't put those in because they just disappear. So black plastic can't be recycled in that way, but it is explained a bit more in the video. And if you've still got questions, then as Jim said, maybe for Councillor Dow, Tondra says that she has had a tour of the facility. Oh, that's the Newhaven one, is it? The incinerator, and only water vapour is output to the air, which is good to know. So there's quite a bit in the chat about, people in the chat seem to know all about the Newhaven incinerator. One thing I did want to mention, I'll just very quickly, hang on, attempt to share my screen. And what we've done as a way of bringing together all of the things, the resources on the website, and some of the things we're talking about today, is a page on some pledges, because we're really talking about what we can all do and the steps we can take. So there's a list there of some of the things that have been discussed or that are on the website, which you can print out or just have a look at and make a note of, maybe some things that you might not already be doing that you want to start thinking about. So that list is on there, and we may well add a few more things. If people have got some suggestions, I will be very happy to add them to that page. I'm going to just leave that there for the moment. I think, Jim, are there any more questions? Because Jim, you're muted.
There's one question again from Jules Woodward asking about the cardboard recycling. There's a rumour going around that it all goes off to China. I would be very surprised if it went that far. I'm fairly certain that most companies these days sort of recycle as locally as they can. So I know ESK has a huge output of cardboard. Yeah, no, it would get recycled locally by one of the local waste companies.
Yeah, on the subject of cardboard, we can reuse cardboard ourselves as individuals. Cardboard makes an excellent mulch ground cover in the garden. If you want to stop weeds coming up in a certain part of your garden, cardboard is excellent. Also, putting cardboard around young plants and then help protect the young plant from weeds while they're getting established. And also putting cardboard in compost heaps. You know, if you're building a compost heap in the back garden, you need to layer the green stuff with brown stuff like cardboard in order to make the compost work properly. So cardboard is incredibly useful for all sorts of reasons. So we can recycle our own cardboard in our own homes and gardens.